Jesus feeds 5,000 people, and his reward is that the people want to make him king. Certainly good rationale if you ask the people, who else could do this? This must be our king. Or, the very definition of no good deed goes unpunished, if you ask me or maybe Jesus. Jesus' response to this is that he withdrew again, and he goes up the mountain by himself. It had been a long day. He'd been healing people. He started by withdrawing with his closest friends to a mountain, and the crowd found him again. This time they were hungry. They didn't know it was a potluck. He feeds 5,000. They want to make him king, and he's still tired, and he goes up the mountain, this time telling the disciples, go on without me, I'll catch up. I have a secret trick. I like this introverted Jesus that we get here. There's so much of this introverted Jesus that I get and that I thank God for as an example. I know that at the end of things, of times of great challenge or of great stress, or even from time to time a wee bit of success, I personally tend to collapse. Maybe you do too. I first noticed this when I sold the literary agency I was entrusted to lead through a transition, despite my protestations of not knowing how to run a literary agency. I was called while I was getting ready to go to seminary, not doing much of anything else, by an old friend's mother who is a noted author and wife and board member of a prominent literary agency downtown. She said, Will, Tim's going to retire and we'd like you to run the literary agency for a couple months while we sell it. I said, I don't know anything about running literary agencies, Susan, and I don't know that I'd be very good at it. And she said, the best piece of advice I've ever gotten, which is, Will, this is the problem with your generation. Always a good beginning where your ears really open up and you really want to hear what this person's going to tell you. When she says, in my day, my dear, you were either competent and people asked you to do things, or you weren't and nobody called. And you, my dear, are very, very competent. So with that, I became president of Russell and Volkening Literary Agency, a storied agency here in New York. What was supposed to be just 6 or 7 weeks while we conducted a corporate sale, while I conducted a corporate sale, became a year and a half and some of the hardest and most interesting work I've ever done into a ministry. I sold that literary agency a year and a half later. It now sits at another great house here in New York, the backlist intact. And when I sold that agency, I collapsed. I slept for about 2 days straight. My dog, Pink, at the time was worried. And it was through my roommate Steve's eyes that I saw the worry of Pink. When I would get up to take Pink outside, I would get up to feed Pink, and then I would kind of collapse back on the sofa or my bed. And at one point, as I was doing this, Pink, who never left my side, looked at Steve, and I just heard Steve in the background going, I know, Pink, I'm worried too. That was the first time I noted that I collapse after feats of great challenge and strength. I noticed it again when I was graduating from seminary, when I was leaving those people that we had literally ripped ourselves wide open with. In seminary, at Union, they often say this 3-year journey is the first year you take off all your clothes, and you stand there naked at the end of the first year going, what do I do? And in the second year, you try on somebody else's clothes. And by the end of that second year, you realize nobody else's clothes fit, and you spend your third year making your own clothes. That's the seminary journey. And at the end of that, I collapsed as well. It was well into my 30s when I realized that I needed to do something or plan my own birthday because I was irritating my friends by my protestations of I don't want to do anything, and then calling them the day of and saying, do you want to have dinner? I made it through my wedding by hiding behind my husband and by a very exuberant minister who I knew would be the real star of the show, and he was, and Patrick and I were fine. Time and time again, I relearned this little quirk of my own mental health. Success or too much focus on me, and I tend to get depressed. I withdraw, I retreat. I need to go to mountaintop places by myself. We all have these little quirks to our mental health, and from time to time, each of us all get head colds. Some of us get anxious and we overfunction or overdo it to place our energy somewhere else. We're the sort of, yeah, that was good, but we need to do more people. Some of us get blue and want to slink under a rock and hope the world leaves us alone. We're the, yeah, that was good, that might have been even really good, but can we please just stop talking about it, people? And some of us operate in this balance, anxiety and depression being two sides of the same coin where symptom and cause can often get confused. Sometimes it feels a bit chaotic or bipolar, schizophrenic even. And when I was 24, I moved from London to San Francisco, and that's about as schizophrenic of a move as you can imagine. In London, any day is a good day for staying in and reading all the New Yorker fiction that I had skipped and ordering a curry takeaway, not talking to anybody, and happy the rain kept us in. In San Francisco, every day was a great day for a hike or a trek or a trip to the mountains or the beach. I found it exhausting, that perpetual sun of Dolores Park giving little reason to stay inside. And I eventually found a balance between those two cities, between, if you will allow the metaphor, myself, in finding what those two cities shared. The ones unknown to all of us here in New York. The ones that begin with, well, you can't eat after 9 o'clock. Forget the idea of a good or properly cold cocktail. Somehow it was acceptable in both London and San Francisco to wear the same outfit day after day, and there was a perpetual dampness that never quite got your sweaters dry in both of these former homes. And after 3 years there, I decamped from the Castro and came east to New York. I've never left. This city's idiosyncrasies match with my own. Jesus came to know us in all our humanity. And know us, he does. He knows the way we tick. He did too. He knows the way we love. He did too. He knows the ways our hearts can break. He knows the betrayal and the desertion of people closest to him. He knows the way we get head colds. He did too. He did too. Today's gospel is a story of miracles, sure. The miracle of feeding 5,000 people from 5 loaves and 2 fish, and we all know this story. We all know it's something that Jesus can do that we can't, and we love that. We love miracle stories. And part of the wonder of the gospel is encountering this Jesus who is so very different from us. Thank God Jesus does things that we can't or don't have to or won't. Jesus does. But if we leave the wonder at all the things that Jesus can do that we can't, we miss the promise of why Jesus came. Of why Jesus came, Emmanuel, God be with us, to know us and to be like us and to show us the way. Today we have a miracle, one that none of us, not even the best cooks among any of us, could repeat, followed immediately by a response that strikes me to my very late July summer core. Jesus had a long day. He did something he probably had no idea he'd have to do at the start of it. He didn't wake up that day knowing there were 5,000 hungry people coming to see him for dinner. Instead, he was a first responder. And he did what he knew that he and he alone could do. He did his part. And when the curtain came up and people called cheering for him to be king, he retreated. He went up to a deserted place to do what God and God alone knows what he did. Maybe you can relate. I can. And while he's there, while he's up taking a minute to himself, his friends know him so well. Those 12 that he's traveling with, they know him so well that they set sail back to Capernaum. Perhaps an odd act of desertion too, that you might be thinking, why would they leave him? But they know that Jesus will find his way back. They trust him. Capernaum is the home of Simon Peter and of his brother Andrew and of his mother, who famously wakes nearly from the dead to cook Jesus dinner. My bet is they were heading back to crash there that night. And if they were headed there, Jesus always knows how to find Peter. Time and time again, Jesus always knows where Peter is. And we also know that Jesus never misses a chance for Peter's mom's cooking. So I'm betting they were all going there, and I bet Jesus knew that too. Go on ahead, Jesus says. I'm going to go up here for a minute to myself. I have a different way of getting across the sea. And when Jesus comes back down, he finds them because he doesn't want to be king. He doesn't want it. Since my sermon last week and the subsequent events of last Sunday afternoon, I've been thinking a lot about who does and who doesn't want to be a leader. Who doesn't want to be a king? Who wants to be president? Who wants to step into leadership rather than doing the work? A wise leader knows when to step aside. A wise leader knows their time and their role. A wise leader knows what is theirs and what is not theirs. Jesus didn't want to be king, which doesn't mean he isn't. Which doesn't mean he isn't the one that we should all be following. Which doesn't mean he isn't the one who knows the way, the truth, and the life. But in our own times, I don't know who does and who doesn't want to be king in the current political landscape. But such is the way of servant leadership. Any of you, any of us, anyone in public service that seeks to lead first by serving and how the people respond. I know that the wise leader responds with humility and who knows who they are and who God made them to be. And what I also know is that we're all in for quite a fall this year, my friends. A fall of battles and debates and mudslinging with what I bet will be all the trademarks of discord and sexism and racism and ageism, both against the ones who we see as too old and against the ones we see as too young. I know we have a long road to hoe between now and November, but first, there is this mountaintop place that says, "Come away to me for a moment by yourself." But first, there is a matter closer to home. Maybe when Jesus went up that mountain, he reflected on the day that he just had. And maybe we here at the end of July can take this moment to look back on a year that we've just had, that you've just had. Altogether, may I remind you of some of the places that you've gone this year, West End Church. You've gone a great way. Collegiate Church has gone a great way as well, nearly unrecognizable to what it was last year at this time. This church too. Perhaps most visibly, we welcomed a new tenant, and this building is now in use fully 7 days a week, with more people and more children than we've had in years. Our budget is more secure than it has been ever. We've created new block parties and welcomed our communities. We've married people, we've fed people, we've welcomed people. We've made our church fiscally sustainable, even in the mess that is and seemingly always be Collegiate Church. We've led programs, we've worshiped, we've prayed, we've gathered, we've done all the things that church should do. We've done so with joy. We've cried together. We've been together. We've wondered together. We've longed together. We've wanted. And onwards we go. And on this Sunday, before I go away to a quiet mountain, I want you to see and know the people that made this possible. You'll see them today, from here to potluck, to lunch, to after. Your incredible staff here at West End Church. To Michael Hayek, leaning against the back radiator, to Matt Puckett sitting amidst you today, to Barry sitting up here with Patrick, Tito and Debbie and Xavier would be here if they weren't so busy making a great lunch for us, to Trey at the door, to our security staff, to the other beautiful musicians and choir members that give us music every week, to the volunteers who come every Tuesday to feed over 120 guests, to your most incredible consistory, which we now call a board. This is going to be big work for us to do this fall. Your incredible West End Church Board, which is chaired by your wonderful Church Board Chair, Marilyn Flood. To the elders and deacons that are beginning to roll off now, to Steve Cambor and Cambridge Ridley Lynch and Catherine Charapko, we say thank you for your service, and to Wendy Cambor and Ruby Green and Kevin George, who were just elected this morning to fill their souls and fill their seats and fill all of us, we say welcome and thank you. To all of you who worked on the block parties, who brought a dish to share today, who wrote a prayer in the prayer chain, who packed a bag of holiday hope back in December, or colored with our children in the back of the sanctuary, who read scripture, who donated flowers, who served as an usher, there isn't one of you here, not one of you here, that didn't make this church church this year. You came to our concerts. You came to worship. You brought a friend. You brought your dogs and pictures of your cats and stuffed animals to be blessed back in the fall. You all made church church. You fed 5,000 people with 2 fish and 5 barley loaves. And there are 12 baskets full of leftovers. Leftovers that are going out to the world, that go out to the world every time you leave this place being fed yourselves. You make miracles happen every day. You tired? I'm tired. I'm so tired. I'm wearing my vacation shirt because it was the only thing that was left that was ironed this morning, and I couldn't iron anything else. I also thought it was a good symbol of, I'm going up to that mountain, and I'm going to go there for myself for a little bit. I'll come back, I promise. Go on ahead. You know the way. I'll catch up. I'm not going anyplace fancy. I'm just going to go yell at some bunny rabbits eating my plants and take a nap with dogs. I can admit, following in the way of Jesus, that I'm feeling a little run down these days. It's a temporary matter. I can admit to feeling a little blue at the end of what I see as a banner year for West End Church. A banner year for all of you coming out of pandemic. Look what you've done. Look at this church that still stands. Look at this church that is more vibrant than it has been in the past 4 years. That made it through. There's a poem I often turn to at this time of the year called Song of a Man Who Has Come Through. It's D.H. Lawrence. It's a beautiful, beautiful ode to where we are. And I'll admit that at this moment I need to take all of you with me in my heart and go remember the goodness that you have offered, the goodness that you have offered me, the goodness that I see you offer each other, and to go talk to my apple trees. I'll bring those fruits back with me in September for you all. I'll admit that if a moment of introverted retreat was good enough for Jesus, I am happy to pick up my cross and follow him there. And maybe you will too. Maybe there are places this August month where you will find yourself, where you will find your soul at rest, where you will know the band that you travel with, those merry friends that make your day may go on ahead without you, but you'll catch up. You don't have any fear. You know who you are, wise leaders that each of you are. And you know there is a hot meal and a warm home waiting for you on the other side. And as you do, as we all do, as we all come back down from the mountains and begin to journey on, we know that there are hot meals that need to be served to more and more people. We know that there is work to do. We know there is ministry on the other side of the lake. We know there are souls to be saved and friends to be lifted up, work to be done, lives to be remembered, and prayers to be said. And we will do this. By God, we will do this. We will do this in the name of Jesus, the one who teaches us that naps are okay, that sometimes you take a vacation, even if it's just to another room in your own apartment, once all the guests have left. May you find space this summer to do what you and you alone can do, to be who you alone and you alone can be, to be the image of God that God put in you, beloved, created, redeemed, and sustained, this and all days. Amen.